Hi guys, so welcome to my YouTube channel. This YouTube channel is dedicated to learning data science with Python. My name is Pablo. I am a data science instructor at Collab Innovation Hub and at All School Africa. And today we are going to be looking at the Pandas data structure, and we're looking at the one-dimensional Pandas data structure, which is a series. If you watch the previous videos, you're going to see that we've introduced a series. So today we are going to be looking at the object data type and Nonone in the Pandas series. And it's important for us to understand what this is about. Now, we have created a series previously. So I'm just going to look at this series, which is data roles. I call it data roles series. And so over here, you're going to see that this is a Pandas series. You can see it just has there's just one column in it, right? And this aspect, this axis you see here is just entirely separate. This is like the index, right? An index can be strings, so yeah. But over here, you can see that we have an object, and it only makes sense that we have objects here because these are like characters. Now, I'm going to recreate this series, but this time around, I'm going to make a change to it so that we could get to understand something. So here, document, so I'll recreate the series. But this time, the series is going to be different, right? So just to make it easier, I'll just come over here and I'll copy all this. I just can't start writing all this all over again. Then I'm going to call this 3. So it's like a pipeline, right? Then I'm going to change all this. These are going to become numbers. So I represent data scientist is 26. That's my favorite number. I'll represent machine learning scientist as 52. There's no special reason how these numbers are generated, just how I feel. And I put 10 over here. It doesn't mean it's any less. So I come back here and I put this as 90. So this looks good. Then finally, I put machine learning engineer and I just make this 50. Right, so you see this. Now, so if I was to run this, I would have created another series. So this is data rows series and it has 3. Now you see over here, you see that the data type has changed. Now there's an int64, which is a representation of integer with more or less like 64 character integer, but that is basically an integer. Now I want to create another scenario and I want to talk about Nonone values. And I also want to talk about objects. Now the object data type, because we're going to see a psychology, so to speak. So this is going to be series with int data types, with an int data type. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to recreate another one. So this time around, I'm going to call this data rows, and it's going to be 4. Now in here, I'm just going to take this again. I'm going to copy this. Right, but guess what I'm going to do? Right here, I am going to remove 50 and then just leave an empty, string over here. Now you're going to see that something is going to change. So when I run this, now I'm going to call this again, and now this is data rows 4. And now you notice, now with the empty space here, which is the empty string, you now notice that the object data type is no longer integer, it is now an object. Again, this is so you know, so now this is a series with object data type. Now, just to let you know that when Pandas looks through the values in your series or even in your data frame, and it expects to see a number, but it doesn't see one. It just automatically changes this to an object. So it's more like it's noticed that they're numbers, but then again, there are characters in there. So that's like sort of like alphanumeric. So it changes that to an object. So I need you to notice that this is such an important thing that happens. Then I think one of the last I'm going to do is also, it's not the last actually, I'm going to create another one. This time I'm going to call this data row 5. You enjoy the way I'm just changing everything in, and then I put this again. Now this time I'm going to introduce, see this? I'm going to introduce none. Wow. See that? I'm going to introduce none. Now it's important for us to understand what none is. So it's a special data type that represents the absence of a value. So again, you can see that over here we had like an empty string. Here now we're introducing none. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this, and then we are going to see something different. So I run this. Again, data 5. And then here we go. And now you see something shows here. And then you can now see something is different. So you see, I'm going to say this. This is series. Oh, sorry. Series with nan, not a number. But interestingly, you notice that we have gone from integers to floats. Right now, this is interesting for us to understand how this happens. Because it's not a number, then Python users generally wouldn't understand this, but this, you'll be familiar. It is switched up immediately when Pandas sees that there's a NaN value. The NaN value immediately, is supports floats, and then immediately it switches everything to floats. It's sort of like what NumPy does, and we're going to talk about that in future. But I want you to see that this happens, right? The series is now float, but it's not int, right? And float is, it's a data type, but float supports nans, but int 64 does not, right? So whenever Pandas sees that it's nan, it just coerces everything to become floats. We're going to talk about this. One important factor in this conversation is NumPy, and we're going to talk about this in future too. And then we'll talk about something called mp.nan. For now, let's leave this for another conversation. Now, the last part of what I'll be doing, and I promise this is the last part, is now imagine we have a data set. Imagine we have a data set, and the data set, like over here, let me look over here. We have a data set. See this? And you can see that this data set has numbers inside, and then it's the column head, and then it has numbers. Again, I just want to introduce the idea around this. So I'll call this data row series 5. That's actually the CSV file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say pd.read CSV. Then I'm going to read the data row CSV. And of course, when I read this is actually a Pandas DataFrame. Then what I'm going to see is I'm going to see this. This is basically the same thing we have over here. Right now, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to check out the data type. So I'm just going to go to this, and I use .info to see the data types. Now you see it's int64. Interesting stuff, right? Now I go over here and I just remove one of these guys, and I just put a question mark here. Then I save it. So when I come back here and I try to run this, I run this again. You can see there's this here. Now the question mark is over here, and then we run this. You can see that it now becomes an object. Aha! So just like, there's a psychology around when we have numbers, then all of a sudden there's a new character in it that does not resemble a number or doesn't look like a number. Immediately, Pandas just switches it to an object. So I want you to have this at the back of your mind, that these are some kind of ways that, Pandas behaves. And you have to understand that in terms of how data analysis works and trying to understand how data in itself can move around in the Pandas ecosystem. So take your time and watch this, right? And get to understand all we've talked about. It's interesting and important and crucial that you get to understand this idea of how Pandas looks at data in terms of objects. And that's why we call it object, data type, and None in Pandas series. Like, subscribe, and share with your friends.